Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief announcement before we begin. The lady that is the facilitator for the service has said that she's going to be late today. So if you'll bear with us, she should be alone soon.
Why would I not be late to your dad's, right? So, hi everybody, thank you for coming. I am Dana Moore-Wills. I am lucky enough to have known Jim Hanson because he was one of my father's best friends. My father was Danny Moore, for those of you who didn't know. And the two of them were inseparable, and there was a trio who is still with us. So I told him I was going to make a kind of a morbid comment about they're waiting for you at the poker table, but I don't know that he would have really loved that. Right, Jack? But anyway, so I'm going to be doing the service, and we're going to start with the military honors. You may be seated. So when we were talking about military honors, I knew how important it was for both of you and how sentimental it was for both of you to receive. So we requested that you both receive. I don't want to spill all the good news or all the fun stuff, but I'm really just going to kind of start with the first song that we're going to play for him. If you knew Jim, he went by lots of names, of course. Jim, Jimbo, Jimmy, Bake a Cake, all kinds of stuff. But James, maybe. Did anybody call him James? Probably not. No. I wouldn't either. It's boring. He wasn't boring. But anyway, so interestingly enough, when Lori and Brandon were going over songs that they wanted to be able to play at his service, they asked for recommendations. And so we were kind of chit-chatting about, 2+ years ago, my father died, and the songs that we had. And we were just, speaking about those songs. And we were talking to the guys actually that work here at Simpson's, trying to think of things that were probably the most appropriate. And, Jim was very much like my father, and it fits them both so well that the first song that they decided on was Simple Man. So.
Told me when I was young, sat beside me, my only son, and listen closely to what I say, and if you do this, it'll help you some sunny day. Too fast, troubles will come, and they will pass. We'll find a woman, and you'll find love. And don't forget, son, there is someone up above. And be a simple kind of man, or be something you love and understand. Baby, be a simple kind of man. Oh, won't you do this for me, son, if you can? Get your lust for the rich man's gold. All that you need is in your soul. And you can do this, baby, if you try. All that I want for you, my son, is to be satisfied and be a simple kind of man.
simple man, funny man, but I don't know the words to that song, but we can make them up, I think. So I knew Jack and Jim, I guess, because it seems like when we were growing up with my mother and father, the two of them were always around. They were, wherever we lived, they kind of lived there and moved there, didn't move there. You know, they were always around. So I spent a lot of my childhood waking up and having one and or both of them sitting at the table playing poker at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, when I'm getting ready for school. So, you know, I had spoke to a couple of people about some stories because I knew him, you know, really, you know, he was my father's best friend, and we knew him as such. He was funny. He was silly. He really never wanted to be serious if he didn't have to be. But he was just kind of always getting into something, you know. So, you know, from my experiences with him, it was, you know, the funny part of him where, you know, we would wake up and I was in high school and I would wake up and Jim at the time was living in Virginia Beach and we were living in Yorktown. And I would come downstairs, you know, ready for school, and Jim and my dad would be sitting at the kitchen table, smoking cigarettes, drinking probably bad coffee, and playing cards, you know. My favorite phrase of his that he used to say is, you know, my dad would play, you know, a great card or a great hand, and he'd, you know, look at him real stern, like he was going to say, you know, something really dirty, and what would come out is, suck a dirty finger, you know? I mean, just the king of phrases, you know, we thought he was silly, you know? So he just kind of had a way about him. Through the years, he was, you know, an entrepreneur of sorts. He was always selling something or working somewhere where he was selling something or trying to get into a business where he was selling something. And he was pretty good at it. You know, he was a good talker. But he wanted to do, and this is quoted from someone else, as little as possible most of the time. So, but Jack and Jim actually went into a business together and owned a waterbed store. And, you know, that lasted for a little while, and then he moved on to some other things. He sold cars forever. My dad, after he retired from the military, owned multiple lots. And, you know, wherever we lived, it seemed like Jim lived there, and they were always running cars, going to auctions, you know, so he was always present. And that was really cool. For a kid, you don't really, you know, kind of realize the impact that other adults have on you, you know, and he wasn't my uncle. Jack, you know, was my, you know, blood uncle, but it seemed like he was, you know, we didn't know the difference. So I was talking to Jack, and I wanted to share a couple of things that we had talked about when we were reminiscing. My dad, I think, was in England, and he had come home to do a visit with his mom in Southeast. And he calls his good friend, you know, and says, hey, you know, Jim, let's, you know, go out, whatever. And Jim said, oh, you know, so Jim, who is already friends with Jack, and I'll tell you that story in a second, they end up meeting, and it was the first time that my father had ever met Jack. Well, Jack had a little sister that decided to tag along, so they went to a pool hall, the one right down in Southeast, and Golden Horseshoe, right? So they went to the Golden Horseshoe, and they played pool, and that was the night that my mother met my father. So Jack took his little sister to tag along, and he met my dad for the first time, and they were best friends, you know, for life, and, you know, Jim was the reason that they actually knew each other. Jack and Jim actually met because Jack was his diaper delivery guy. Lori was born, and Jim and Frida had decided they needed a diaper delivery service, and Jack was their guy. He was the guy that took him away, brought him, you know, I mean, and you know, when I talked to Jack, I said, it's kind, you know, I mean, you can make friends anywhere, but, you know, why Jim? You know, he said, it was just fun. You know, I'd drop stuff off, we'd make fun comments, you know, I really liked him. I really just liked him. And so they, became friends just from this diaper delivery service, that for Lori's little butt. Isn't that cute? But that's actually how Jack and Jim met. And, to this day, two of the three of the trio are now no longer with us. But I think that the majority of people that knew them together knew that they really didn't go anywhere, without the other one. So when you say friends for life, I don't know what that means. I'm 41, and I have friends, but I don't have dear friends that I've had the majority of my adult life. We decided on 53 years. Is that what we decided on? 53 years was how long you knew him, right? Yeah, 53 years. I'm 41. I can't imagine still drinking coffee and playing poker with the same people in my life. People, in our day, some people are just passing through and they're impactful in your lives, but they float in and they float out. Some people, are important or impactful enough to stay, and Jim was important enough to stay in a lot of people's lives. And the perfect example of that is Frida. If you don't know Frida is his first wife and Lori's mother. And, when I asked her, what'd you like about Jim? And she said, he's just a fun guy. Just a fun guy, So, they even after they split, they double dated, husband and wife, ex-husband, ex-wife, double dating, hanging out, having a good time. He's just a fun guy, right? But just a good guy, always doing fun stuff, playing pranks on people. Frida said he never left his door locked. So Frida and a friend went over and dressed up this kind of dummy in his clothes. They stuffed his clothes and set, ashtrays and all kinds of stuff all around, like it was like a person, and never told him for a really long time, who had actually done it. And he's just astonished because he was probably stoned, and he was astonished and could never figure out who came into his house and did that, So finally she told him, and, of course he probably was like, oh, go suck a dirty finger, but, or Jiminy Cricket. But it's the common theme with him is that he's like the good guy. He's the good guy, He had a stroke in 2002. He was at the VVCC for about 18 years, and had an entire new set of family with the staff there. As he just kind of migrates everywhere, he just kind of, people just cling to him. He's very infectious. And, I'm actually an occupational therapist, so stroke rehab is something that, I have done for the last 16 years of my life. And strokes were my primary diagnosis, that I worked with. And so, when Jim had his stroke, I was in Virginia Beach often at the rehab center where he was, just sitting. And he had what was called global aphasia at the time, which means there's a receptive component and there is an expressive component. At the beginning, he really couldn't understand what you were saying, but he also couldn't get out what he wanted to say. So that's a whole mess, and that's where all these bad words kind of come in, which I won't say up here. So the receptive stuff definitely got better. For anybody who didn't know, or maybe was even a little nervous about knowing if he could understand or couldn't understand, he understood everything that you were saying for the last 20 years. With expressive aphasia, what happens is the brain loses that connection to be able to actually go from your brain to your mouth and make those pieces of your mouth move. So your tongue roll, the way that you put your tongue on the top of your mouth at the bottom, or when you close your lips together, and how all those things pragmatically work together. Jim lost the ability to do that. And so think about how frustrating it is. He's trying to talk to you, and all he can get out is bake a cake, bake a cake. Jiminy Cricket, And he was very animated, which I think made it a lot easier for him to be understood, because he, is always up to some kind of fun. And you could get the gist of what he needed, but he was always able to communicate, I think, even with the limited amount of words that he had. But he always knew what you were telling him. He just was pissed off that he couldn't tell you what he wanted to tell you, because he was having a conversation with you in his head. He just couldn't get it out of his mouth. While he was there, he took up sketching and was really, really, really good at it. And when I got here earlier this week to help, Brandon and Lori with some of this stuff, I said, "Where is a sketchbook?" And oddly, nobody knows where it is. So either he hid it because he was like, "Damn it, I'm taking it with me," or nobody knows. We don't know where the sketchbook is at this point. So the VVCC is looking for it. But if you've not ever seen any of his sketches, we do have pictures, and we can, post on Facebook and all kinds of stuff. But self-taught, just give him that sketchbook, and it was amazing. And it more just shades, like the pencil shades and the darks and the lights and the grays. And it's just really, really impressive that somebody could pick up something like that. And a lot of people would look at somebody who can't speak and say, there's no way they could do this. He had one hand that worked. His left hand worked because he had lost the ability to use his right hand. Towards the end, he was scooting around in his wheelchair all the time. Brandon was really kind of just born. He was within months old, actually, when Jim had a stroke. And so, Brandon and I are very close. He actually spent a year being the nanny of my little girls right here. And so, we talked about my dad a lot. We talked about Jim a lot. We talked about Lori a lot, And, when I say, what was like your favorite part of him? And he said, just things like standing on the back of his wheelchair growing up and him just scooting around in it, So Jim had a leg, and it would get him wherever he needed to go within that facility or wherever. And it could be quick. If he was in a hurry, he was going to get there in a hurry. And when he was done visiting with you, he was done visiting with you. And it was like, bye, see ya. So, but Brandon's entire life he spent at the VVCC. So, that family there became, part of their direct family as well. But he was left to visit with Jim. And quote unquote, they got bored and they didn't know what they wanted to do. And Lori was only going to be gone for like 2 hours. So how bad could it be, right? Nope, they decided to give haircuts. So Brandon decided he was going to be a cosmetologist that day, a hairstyler that day, and he cut his hair at the VVCC. Like, I don't know how that was allowed, but okay, But so, it's neat to hear Brandon with the stories that he has, because that's a Jim that didn't speak. Brandon's actually never known him with a voice. And so Brandon has learned so much about him just through, the people that did know him prior to his stroke. And he continues to hear stories that he's never heard all the time. Just just talking with people, to put this all together, hearing stories that I've never heard before. And I'm going, what? You guys did what? Some of it illegal, some of it unimportant for large crowds, but fun. So the bake a cake, just in case anybody maybe saw that in the obituary or knew Jim and had heard him say that was one of his choice phrases with expressive aphasia. The story behind that is actually that Brandon was about 6 months old, and Jim, as you know, is very hard-headed and stubborn, and he did not like speech therapy. He did not like speech therapy. So the speech therapist got with Lori and said, what if we brought the baby in? Maybe the baby would get him going and, do stuff, Well, at the time, Brandon was learning how to do patty cake, baker's man, bake me a cake. And it stuck. So he's in speech therapy. Lori brings the baby in. They're doing patty cake, patty cake, patty cake. And that was literally the phrase that that man has used for the last 19 years of his life, which is pretty cool because it's based around the boy that never knew him prior to the stroke, you know? So, you know, a lot of people are probably like, what is that? Bake a cake, what is that, you know? That's the story behind Bake a Cake. You know, he didn't want to do speech therapy. Imagine that. Imagine that. So Jim was visiting Jack at a marina. There was a very large boat, and Jack said he was taking down the name of the boat, and the name of the boat was Misty, Misty. And he's, you know, up on this high ladder, and Jim comes walking in, you know, it's this old mahogany boat, comes walking in, and he looks down, and he always called Jack, his name is Jack Jones, but he always called him Jones. So he comes up and says, "Hey, Jones, what's the name of your boat? Stymie?" From the Little Rascals, you know. And Jack just said he almost fell off the ladder because, you know, there's the M and the I and the S and the T and the Y, and they're just kind of all scattered, you know, and they're all on the ground where he's just taking them off the boat. And that's what Jim read, you know, that's what he had. And Jack said it, you know, it was so funny, he almost fell off the ladder, you know, but only Jim could kind of come up with, you know, funny stuff like that. So he definitely was a character, and though he was a simple man, he enhanced everyone's lives that he encountered. You know, and you know, pre-stroke, post-stroke, you know, same guy, just a different communication pattern, and a little more warped humor, I'd say. You know. But very OCD about, you know, cleanliness and what he was wearing and all that stuff, you know. I asked Brandon if he was going to wear a button-up shirt and a tie, and he said, "No, I'm wearing my granddad's shirt." So the polo that he has on is Jim's shirt, and he wears it proudly, right? But, you know, Lori is the one, and Brandon is the one. So not having him here is a major loss. You know, and he was very impactful to my life and, you know, my family's life. And, you know, the poker games that they have had over the years, you know, if you read the obituary, which I'm sure all of you did, it was written in a very non-traditional way. And there was a lot that went into that. Just trying to turn things around and fit things different ways, making it appropriate. How do you put this in? You know, is Frida the baby mama, or is she the first wife? Or, you know, I mean, you know, just there was a lot kind of, you know, to take into place. But a regular, normal, traditional obituary would not have fit him, and it wouldn't have been appropriate for us. And so we did write it kind of in a non-traditional way. And, you know, it brought up a lot of memories of, you know, just our dads together. It brought up a lot of memories. This is somewhat the last puzzle piece of my father, because Jim was kind of that other piece to him. So being here with them this week and being able to, you know, do the things that we've done is extremely impactful to me as well, because Jim really was that other piece of my dad. So it's been interesting. I don't know that we told anybody really after my father died, but Lori and I, and Brandon, by default, because he had just got his driver's license and we let him drive us around, we actually went to the funeral home, and my father had an ulnar sway, so his hand, you know, shifted down this way. He had the perfect handshake, and anybody who had ever shaken his hand really knew that it was the perfect handshake. So Lori and I, being the morbid people that we are, we found a lot of closure and a lot of healing by casting hands with him, like a handshake. And so we actually, you know, went to the funeral home and took casting materials with us, and we actually casted, you know, like the actual handshake of my father with his hands. And it was so impactful that in that very room while we were doing that, Lori loses it and says, when my daddy dies, I want you to speak, and I said, oh, absolutely, it sucks, but sure, yeah, absolutely, and so this week, I got the phone call that Jim, was no longer with us, and I went right into, okay, how do we get to Roanoke? I live in Richmond, how do we get to Roanoke? What's going on? My girls, what do we need to do? And, getting everything together, trying to coordinate everything. And one of the primary goals for the week was to get that hand casting. I knew how significant it was for myself and for her, and as like a healing for my father. And I knew how impactful that was and how important that was to have that with her father. And so we came here and we had a good old party, didn't we? Frida stopped by. She may or may not have brought alcohol, but it's over now, so there's no evidence. And we did as many casts as it took to try to get a really, really good product of what she wanted of her holding her dad's hand. And significantly, she actually chose to hold his stroke side because it was the one side that was very, very contracted. And so it closes, so hard on you. You have to really negotiate to get out of that handhold. And, we went back and forth, and, Lori was kind of all over the place, which, you are when your dad dies. And, I kind of knew what she wanted, so I was a little pushy about, like, getting what I knew she wanted, even though she's like, oh, let's be done, But we went back and forth. Well, let's do this hand, let's do that hand. Well, what about this? What are the, And at first it was, let's sway away from that stroke hand, because it's the skinnier hand, and he never used it, and there's not a lot of musculature in it, But I kind of looked at her, and I don't know how it really came out. Like I didn't really think about it, but I said, well, if you held this hand, you're never gonna let him go, And she just kind of looked at me, and we both kind of lost it. Brandon kind of lost it. And I said, we're doing this hand. That's just the way it is, So we ended up casting their right hands because that was the hand that Jim was never going to let her go, So that was very impactful for, I think, everybody. But it was, something that we didn't really talk about, like after, we had my dad's service, and but it was something that for us was a lot of closure, and it provided this, kind of doing it full circle with my father and now her father. It was extremely healing, I think. So, so I'm gonna stop there, and the song that they are gonna play is, don't tell me. I can find it. I'm really going to miss you. Is that right? Yeah.
Really gonna miss you. It's really gonna be different without you. Time's gonna be hard and slow for the rest of my life. Gonna be thinking about you. Yes, I am. Time came when you had to go. I'll miss you, my buddy. I'll miss you, my friend. I promise my love for you will never end. In your finest hour, I was there with you, and without you things won't be the same. But there's a higher power that we answer to, and you heard really gonna miss you. Everything about you and your smiling face. I know you want us all to be strong. Really gonna miss you. I know you're going to that magic place. Yes, you are. Singing you a brand new song. I'll miss you, my buddy. I'll miss you, my friend. I promise my love for you will never end. I'll miss you, my buddy. And I'll miss you, my friend. I promise my love for you will never end. No, it won't. Really gonna miss you. Really gonna miss you. Really gonna miss you. Really gonna miss you.
All right, it's a little too serious in here. I probably don't wear it as well, but Jim always wore fun hats. Did you guys bring your hats? I thought you were wearing your hats. At this time, I have had a couple people ask, to share, but anybody who would like to share a funny story or a memory about Jim, please come up to the podium because they can't actually hear you through the microphone if you don't. So, do you want to start, David? That's you. And this is my great uncle David, actually. So. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Dana. My name is David Brooks. I've known Jim for a long time. We grew up together in Southeast Roanoke on Moorhead Avenue. We had some good times during that period. We played some cards together and drank a little liquor and stuff like that, and got in trouble a few times. Me and him and Danny Moore were best of friends during that time. In June of 1963, we decided to see the world and join a branch of military service. Talked about the Marine Corps or the Air Force. So we couldn't make up our mind, so we decided to flip a coin. Flipped the coin, the Air Force won. And the way things turned out with Vietnam, I'm glad we did that, but anyway. First person I seen when I got in the service after we had boot camp, I'd never seen Jim after that. I seen Danny Moore in Vietnam. Talked to him a little bit and had a few socials and had a good time. Jim was a real good person. I really liked him a lot. Like I said, we did a whole lot of stuff together. I belong to the Roanoke Elks Lodge, 197. We do a whole lot of work for the veterans. We have chicken cookouts. We take food up there and cook for them and have a lot of socials with them. I'm the chairman of the Veterans Committee for the Elks Lodge. First time I seen Jim was one of the the things we did for them, we took them to the bowling alley, Lehigh Lanes. We do that every once a month, first Thursday of the month. Didn't recognize the mayor for a minute, had his hat on. He didn't know who I was. After we talked a little bit, he was glad to see me, and I was glad to see him, and I look forward to see him every time we come in. He was always there, always smiling, baking a cake. That was good. We served them drinks and cookies and cakes and sometimes hamburgers and hot dogs and popcorn, whatever. They really enjoyed it. Of course, Jim couldn't bowl like everybody else, and a whole lot of other people couldn't either because they was in wheelchairs. The veterans brought them up to the bowl alley. We met them at the bus and rolled them into the bowling alley and helped them bowl. Had a stand there where they could put the ball up on it and they would roll it, and they was having a good time, and they thought they was doing good. Jim was pretty good at times. Sometimes the ball wouldn't go right, and he was mad. But he had a good time with it. I won't keep y'all too much longer, but I got one thing I would like to comment on, that Jim was a good friend of mine. He will be missed, and I'm sure everybody else will miss him. Sorry for your loss. Rest in peace, my friend.
There is a special someone who knew Jim very well from the VVCC. If she would like to come up, I think she has some funny things that you guys would probably appreciate.
Hello, my name is Marquita Payne. I'm a social worker, and I work at the veterans, at the VA now, at the Salem VA. So to all the veterans here, thank you for your service. We really appreciate each and every one of you. I met Mr. Hanson fresh out of graduate school, and I started working at the VVCC. 2 East was my unit. So it was about 60 veterans on that unit, 2 hallways, and about 30 on each hallway. So part of my job was going to see the veterans, talking to them, doing an assessment on them to see, how their cognition was, what their needs were, talking about family. And his room at the time was all the way at the end of the hallway. And they said, when you meet Mr. Hanson, you're going to remember him. And sure enough, yes, I did. I have so many wonderful memories of Hanson, as I called him usually, or bake a cake. And I had just saw him this past Saturday. I was there visiting at the care center, and I asked one of the nurses, didn't even know her. I said, where is Mr. Hanson? And she said, you're not going to miss him. He's in front of the TV wearing a bright yellow shirt. And I went up to him and I said hi, and he looked at me and he said, ooh, wait a minute. And he said, ooh. and I took my mask down. And I said, I'm Marquita, I was the social worker here. Oh, Jiminy Cricket. He was so excited. And we talked, and, I asked him, I said, PJ's not working today, because PJ was one of his favorites there. She's a restorative aide there, has been there for years, and he always, PJ, where's PJ? And then Coco was another one there. But one of the stories that I have about Mr. Hanson was right after I left the Virginia Veterans Care Center, and I took another job working for the state. I went to work at Catawba Hospital. It was very hard for me to leave my veterans there. But I would go back very frequently to go back and visit them. And PJ sent me a text, and she said, we're going out to Smoky Bones out at Valley View. You want to meet us out there? And I said, okay. She said, you know Hanson's coming with us. And I said, all right, yeah, let's go. So I meet them out at Smoky Bones, and, you know, we're there, we're eating. Oh, it was fabulous. We had a table full of veterans. The staff was wonderful, accommodating, and, you know, we were allowed to buy our veterans some beer if we wanted to. So they said no more than 2, you know. So I wasn't working, I wasn't on the clock, so I could share beer with Hanson. You know, we could drink together for the first time. And, you know, he drank some beer, had a good time, and ate some good food. And when we got back, he, you know, on the bus ride back, he looked like he was feeling pretty good. Face was a little red, kept laughing, and old bake a cake, and wait a minute, and Jiminy Cricket. So we get him back in the care center, and we wheel him in, and he gets on the unit on 2 East, and right before you get to the hallway where the rooms are, he's hats off, shirts off. He's zigzagging down the hallway. And the nurse on duty looks at me and she's like, this is how you brought him back? I was like, it's not my fault. I was like, but whatever meds he needs, I'm pretty sure he's not going to need them tonight. And that was just one of the amazing times I had with Hanson. I mean, he was a fun guy. I mean, he just never, he could get upset, you know, if he got a roommate that was not as tidy as him, and I would try to explain to him, there's not one veteran here that's going to be as tidy as you. You know, he would come in, ooh, bake a cake, and pow. And I'm like, please don't hit them. You know, but, you know, he did not let his limitations, you know, keep him from having a good time and just being a phenomenal person and just having a great personality. Always had a smile on his face, always laughing, spoke to everyone. If you didn't see him sometimes at the care center, he would be in the library sketching, you know, doing his own thing, very independent. And I know that he touched so many people while he was there. And like I said, it's just shocking to see Brandon this old now, because I remember when he was really little. But he loved his family, and he just loved life, and he will be so missed by everyone. And I know that some of the staff at the BBCC, they're probably working, and they weren't able to make it, but I know they send their condolences, and just know that I know he's smiling down on all of us now. Thank you.
Same, Jim. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Going once, going twice. Sold. So the last song for the service is going to be Heaven Was Needing a Hero with Jody Messina, which is, I think, appropriate for him. He's going to be missed, and, you know, he's in a different place, but he's going to make them laugh too. So he's now with my dad at the eternal poker table, you know, drinking bad coffee and smoking cigarettes, and, you know, apparently his poker phrase was that, what is it, winners can brag and losers say, deal, damn it, deal. So, you know, he loved a good card game, and he's up there right now saying, deal 'em. So we're going to go ahead and play Heaven Was Needing a Hero.
I came by today to see you. Oh, I had to let you know. If I knew the last time that I held you was the last time, I'd have held you and never let go. Oh, it's kept me awake nights wondering. I lie in the dark just asking why. I've always been told you won't be called home until it's your time. I guess heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you. I remember the last time I saw you. Oh, you held your head up proud. I laughed inside when I saw how you were standing out in the crowd. You're such a part of who I am. Now that part will just be void. No matter how much I need you now, heaven needed you more. 'Cause heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you. Yes, heaven was needing a hero, and that's you.
I think we all can agree that he was a very impactful person and that he's going to be missed. So I'm just going to go ahead and conclude here. The family is having a celebration of life. It is what? Yeah, I was about to say I don't know that one by heart. It's 1147 Hickory Cove Lane. It's in Manita, and we would love to have you so that we can do what Jim wanted us to actually do, and that is to have a party and celebrate his life. So, so please come if you can. If you have time, we would love to hear your stories and tell you ours. Thank you.